Hello. Before we dive into the story, please take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, like if you enjoy realistic survival stories, and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. Now, get comfortable, because when the world plunges into darkness, the only thing that matters is what you can build and what you can hold on to. Today's story is about Erik, an ordinary American civil engineer who uses real building systems, strict rules, and makes difficult decisions to turn a fortified shelter into a place that can survive collapse. As the epidemic spreads and normal life is destroyed, every decision becomes important. Water, electricity, sanitation, noise, and rules that prevent fear from turning into chaos. My name is Erik. I used to introduce myself with a job title: Facility Engineer, the guy who keeps buildings alive when nobody notices them. Air handlers, fire pumps, backup power, water pressure, door hardware, the unglamorous stuff that turns a structure into a place people can actually survive inside. Now, I introduce myself with a location and a fact. I'm still breathing, and I'm inside a room that was built to hold up when everything else fails. The first week of the outbreak taught me something I didn't learn in any training manual. The world doesn't fall apart all at once. It frays, it snags on 1,000 little decisions. A missed delivery, a sick driver, a police officer who doesn't show up, a dispatcher who can't keep up, one locked gate, one empty gas station, one rumor that turns into a stampede. I'm telling this like a report because that's what kept me steady. If I named what was happening, measured it, tracked it, maybe it would stay inside the boundaries of my words. Maybe it wouldn't spill over into panic. It spilled anyway. I was in central Oklahoma when it started to feel real. Outside Oklahoma City, the flat land broken up by water towers and grain elevators. The kind of place where you can see weather coming from 15 miles away. On a Tuesday morning, the sky was clean and hard blue, and my phone buzzed with a notification about a viral incident in a hospital in Tulsa. By noon, there were videos. By evening, the local news was warning people not to go to emergency rooms unless it was absolutely necessary. The next day, the first shutdowns hit like a poorly coordinated drill. A few schools closed, then more. A handful of businesses sent people home. The grocery store near my apartment looked like it did before an ice storm. Carts piled high with bottled water, bread, batteries, and whatever people thought would make them feel in control. I bought practical things because practicality is my comfort blanket. A pair of work gloves, nitrile gloves, a couple of N95 masks from the hardware aisle. A basic first aid kit that looked more confident than it actually was. A headlamp. 2 5-gallon water jugs. I grabbed shelf-stable food without thinking too hard about taste. Peanut butter, canned beans, rice, tuna, powdered drink mix. I grabbed duct tape because I always grab duct tape, and I grabbed contractor trash bags because you can do 100 important things with a thick trash bag if you're not picky. That night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a woman named Hannah Loeb, the assistant principal at Cedar Ridge Intermediate, a newer school on the north side of the metro. I'd done some contractor oversight there the year before. HVAC commissioning, door hardware punch list, generator testing. Not a close relationship, but enough that she had my name saved. "Erik," she said, "I'm sorry, I know it's late. We're doing something tomorrow, and I need a facilities brain. I need yours." "What's happening?" I asked. There was a pause that made my stomach tighten. "We're opening the safe room," she said. "We're not supposed to use it except for tornado warnings, but the district is basically gone. Phones are down. The superintendent is sick. People are coming anyway. Parents, staff, some of the neighborhood. The police told us to shelter in place if we can. We can." "The FEMA safe room?" I asked, and when I said the words I pictured it instantly. A reinforced concrete core inside the school, with thicker walls and heavier doors, designed to keep people alive during an EF5 tornado. Built to a standard meant to resist wind pressures and debris impacts that would turn most buildings into kindling. "Yes," Hannah said. "The one you walked with me. The one you said was actually legit." "I said that," I admitted. "Please," she said, "come in the morning. We've got a custodian here, but he's scared. We all are. We need to do this right." I stared at my kitchen table, at the small pile of supplies that felt suddenly childish. "Okay," I said. "I'll be there." When I hung up, I sat still for a long time. Outside, a siren rose and fell and rose again. It wasn't the clean, single-purpose sound of a tornado warning. It was the messy, overlapping noise of a system starting to overheat. In my line of work, you learn to listen for the early warnings. A pump that's cavitating. A breaker that's warm when it shouldn't be. A vibration in a fan bearing that whispers you've got maybe 2 weeks before it screams. That night, the world sounded like a bearing ready to seize. I didn't sleep. I tried, but my brain kept doing what it always does. It ran down checklists. The safe room had heavy steel doors with multi-point latching, and the hinges were designed to take abuse. The walls were thick. The roof was thick. There were vents, but the vents weren't built for contamination control, only for pressure equalization and basic air exchange. The room had power, emergency lighting, and basic communications lines tied into the building systems, but I couldn't count on the grid. A tornado safe room is designed to protect you for hours, maybe overnight. Not weeks, not months. But the core was there. The bones were strong. If I could turn bones into a body, we might have a chance. At 7:15 a.m., I loaded my car with everything I'd bought, plus whatever else I could justify. A small toolbox, extension cords, a folding camp stove, a box of spare batteries, a couple of tarps, a roll of plastic sheeting, and my old handheld radio that I used for work sites. I wasn't a radio guy, but I knew enough to listen. The drive to Cedar Ridge took 30 minutes. It should have been quiet roads at that hour. There were more cars than usual, and some of them weren't moving like normal commuters. They were drifting, indecisive, as if the drivers had no destination and were trying to invent one at intersections. Halfway there, I passed a gas station with a line wrapped around the building. At the end of the line, a guy was holding a red plastic gas can like it was a life raft. When I turned onto the school's street, I saw the first sign that Hannah hadn't exaggerated. Cars were already parked along the curb and in the lot. People stood in small clusters, facing the building with their arms folded, their faces set in that stubborn expression people wear when they've decided they deserve safety. I parked near the maintenance entrance and found Hannah by the main doors. She was in her late 30s, hair pulled tight, wearing a school polo like a uniform she didn't trust anymore. "You came," she said, and her voice cracked just enough to reveal how close to the edge she was. "I said I would," I told her. "Where's the custodian?" "Frank's inside," she said. He's been running around like he's trying to outrun his own thoughts. We also have Nurse Patel." "Nurse Patel," I repeated. "School nurse," Hannah said. "Real nurse, not just Band-Aids. She used to work at Integris. She's the reason I'm still thinking straight." I nodded. "Good. Anyone else?" "A parent named Luis Morales," Hannah said. "He's an electrician. He's been helping Frank. Also, a guy named Reverend Cole is here with 3 people from his church. And 2 police officers stopped by, but they left to respond to something. They told us to keep the doors locked." "Locked doors don't help if you open them for everyone," I said, more bluntly than I intended. Hannah looked past me at the crowd forming, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. Responsibility, fear, guilt, all tangled up. "We can't just turn them away," she said quietly. "These are families." "I'm not saying we turn away everyone," I said. "I'm saying we do it in a way that doesn't get everyone killed. We need a plan before the doors become a suggestion." She swallowed. "Okay, you tell me what to do." That was the moment my life shifted. Not because I wanted control, but because she handed it to me the way someone hands you a fire extinguisher when the kitchen is already smoking. Inside, the school smelled like floor wax and leftover cafeteria food. The hallway lights were on, but there was a jittery quality to them, like the power wasn't as stable as it should be. Frank, the custodian, met us near the mechanical room. He was a compact man in his 50s, with a shaved head and tired eyes. His hands were stained with grease and disinfectant. "Erik," he said, and the relief in his voice was so obvious it was almost painful. "Thank God, this place is not meant for this." "Nothing is," I said, and clapped his shoulder. "Show me the safe room." We walked quickly, Hannah leading us through corridors that were normally filled with kids. The silence made every footstep sound like it mattered. The safe room was a reinforced core near the center of the building, accessible from 2 hallways. The doors were heavy, steel-skinned, with multiple locking points and thick frames anchored into the concrete. A small sign nearby had instructions for tornado sheltering. It felt naive now. Frank unlocked the outer door with a key and a practiced motion. The door opened with a sound like a vault deciding to tolerate you. Inside, the room was bigger than most people expect when they hear safe room. It wasn't a closet. It was a large, open area with exposed concrete walls, a concrete ceiling, and a durable floor meant to take abuse. There were a couple of storage closets, a small restroom area with toilets and sinks, and a corner with electrical panels and a wall-mounted cabinet labeled for emergency supplies. "The ventilation is through those grills," Frank said, pointing to metal grates high on the wall. I walked over, looked behind them with a flashlight, and found a duct run that tied into the building's ventilation system. I didn't like that. "If the building air is contaminated, this pulls it in," I said. "We can shut dampers," Frank said. I mean, there's a mechanical damper somewhere." "I want it found," I said. "If we can isolate this room's air path, we do it." Hannah moved closer. Is that really how it spreads? Through air?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But if we treat it like a respiratory hazard, we're less likely to make a dumb mistake. Worst case, we're overly cautious." Nurse Patel joined us then, walking with purpose. Her first name was Syra. She wore scrubs under a jacket and had her hair braided tight. Her eyes went straight to the restroom area, then to the emergency cabinet. "Who's in charge?" she asked. Not rudely, just like a person who wants a problem to have a shape. Hannah looked at me. "Erik," she said. He knows the building." Saira nodded. "Okay, Erik. My priority is infection control and triage. We need a screening area before anyone comes into this room." "Agreed," I said instantly. "I want a choke point. One entrance for intake, one for exit only if we can. We need to control flow." Frank shifted his weight. "People are getting angry outside," he said. "They're banging on the doors now." That put a clock on everything. I took a breath and forced my voice calm. "Here's what we do," I said. "Hannah, you talk to them. Keep them listening. Tell them we're opening, but we have to do it safely. Use your school voice. Make it sound official." Hannah almost smiled, despite everything. "I can do official." "Sarah," I continued, "you and Frank set up a screening station in the hallway outside this room. We'll use tables from classrooms, gloves, masks. We'll do basic checks. Anyone with fever or obvious symptoms stays separated." Saira's eyes narrowed. "And if they refuse?" "We don't wrestle," I said. "We don't create chaos. We set rules and we enforce them with a calm spine. If someone can't follow rules, they don't come in. That's not cruelty. That's survival." Luis Morales appeared in the hallway then. He was tall, maybe early 40s, wearing a work jacket with a company logo and carrying a tool pouch like he'd grabbed it without thinking. His expression was grim but focused. "I heard you say rules," he said. "I'm with you. People out there are scared. Scared people do stupid stuff." "Can you help with power?" I asked him. "If the grid drops, I need backup. I need to know what circuits feed this room." Luis nodded. "Show me the panels." We moved quickly. The first hour was pure motion, dragging tables into the hallway, marking a line on the floor with tape, setting up a place where people could put their bags down and be checked. We scavenged supplies from science classrooms and nurse stations, disinfectant wipes, paper towels, spare gloves, a few boxes of surgical masks that had been forgotten in a cabinet since flu season. Hannah stood outside the main doors with her hands raised, speaking to the crowd like she was addressing a restless auditorium. I couldn't hear her words from inside, but I could see her posture. Steady, calm, using authority like a tool. While that happened, I went looking for the mechanical damper Frank had mentioned. In newer schools, the safe room often has a dedicated ventilation path, but not always. Some designs rely on the building's system with manual shutoffs. I followed the ductwork in the ceiling above the hallway and found it ran an access panel that led to a dampers box. Frank brought a ladder and a flashlight, and we opened it. Inside was a manual damper handle with a simple label. "This is it," Frank breathed, like he'd found a hidden exit in a burning maze. I moved the handle slowly and felt resistance, then a thunk as it seated. I taped it into place with bright tape and wrote on the wall in thick marker, "Safe room air damper closed. Do not open." It was a small act, but it made me feel like I'd pushed back against chaos with my own hands. Luis and I traced the power. The safe room had dedicated circuits for lighting and outlets, but they still ran through the building's main electrical system. The school had a backup generator, a diesel unit outside near the service yard, sized to support critical loads, not everything. In my memory, it was meant to keep emergency lights, fire alarm, communications, and limited heating or cooling running during outages. "Generator fuel?" I asked Frank. Frank's face pinched. tank is about 500 gallons, he said. We top it off quarterly. Last fill was, he thought, then shook his head. A month ago, maybe. Hard to say. 500 gallons sounded like a lot until you translate it into hours. A generator under load can drink fuel fast. Depending on the size and load, you might get days, not weeks. Solar? Luis asked, half joking. Not on this building, Frank said. District didn't want to pay. I looked around the safe rooms again. Then we treat generator as precious, I said. We run it only when we need to. We live off daylight as much as possible. No wasted power. Syra returned, pulling off gloves. Screening is ready, she said. But I'm telling you now, we can't bring everyone in, not if we want this to last. I nodded, because I'd been thinking the same thing. The safe room had capacity guidelines, hundreds during a tornado, packed tight for a few hours. That's not livable. Not with toilets, water, food, and sleep. How many? I asked her. How many can we safely keep without turning this into a disease factory? She shot back. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a reality check. I did the math in my head, floor area, space per person, sanitation, water consumption. You can survive packed together for a short period, but long-term you need air, sleep, hygiene, order. 50, I said finally. Maybe 60 if we're disciplined. Any more and we lose control. Hannah came in then, cheeks flushed from the cold air outside and from the work of holding people back with words. They want in now, she said. They're saying if we don't open, they'll break windows. Then we open in a controlled way, I said. We do intake. We take families first. We take people who can help us keep this functional. We do not announce that out loud. We just select. Hannah's mouth tightened. That's going to feel awful. It will, Syra said, soft but firm. But if we take everyone until the room is full of panic and sickness, we won't save anyone. We'll just die in a crowd. Hannah nodded once, like she'd swallowed something sharp. We opened the main doors a crack and set the flow. One family at a time, bags checked for obvious hazards, mostly because fear can turn anything into a weapon. I kept my instructions focused on safety and rules, not on confrontation. No one was allowed into the safe room without being screened. Anyone who refused was asked to leave. If they argued, Hannah spoke to them with that steady voice, repeating the rules like a mantra. It wasn't perfect. People cried. People begged. A man in a suit tried to push past, saying he paid taxes. A teenager shouted that we were playing God. A woman clutched a cat carrier and asked if her cat could come. We said yes, but the animal had to stay contained. Rules. Always rules. The first time I saw someone who looked wrong, my heart hammered hard enough to make my vision narrow. It was a middle-aged guy with a bandage on his forearm. His eyes were unfocused. His jaw moved in small, repetitive motions like he was chewing on nothing. Syra stepped between him and the line. "Sir," she said gently, "can you look at me? What's your name?" He didn't answer. He tried to step forward again. Luis shifted closer, ready to block without touching. "Sir," Syra repeated, louder. "Stop." The man's head snapped toward her, and for a second his eyes were clear. Then they went cloudy again. He lunged, not with the calculated aggression of a sane person, but with a hungry reflex. Luis shoved the table forward, creating space without striking him. The table hit the man's hips and slowed him. Frank and I grabbed the table's sides to keep it from tipping. "Back," I shouted to the line, "Back up!" The crowd surged away like a wave retreating from a sudden drop. 2 police officers appeared at the doors, drawn by the noise. One was a woman with her hair in a tight bun, the other a broad-shouldered man with tired eyes. They moved fast, using their bodies to create a barrier. "We got him," the woman said, and her voice was a calm knife. They guided the man away without getting close to his mouth or hands, using distance and positioning rather than wrestling. It was controlled. It was professional. It was also terrifying, because it meant the videos weren't exaggerating. After they pulled him outside and shut the doors, the safe room hallway felt like the air had thickened. "What do we do with him?" Hannah asked, voice trembling. The male officer exhaled slowly. "We call it in," he said, "but nobody's answering dispatch. It's chaos." The female officer looked at me. "I'm Officer Dana Klein," she said. "This is Officer Mark Baines. We're not staying. We've got calls stacked and no backup. But if you're serious about holding this place, you need a perimeter." "A perimeter with what?" I asked, and I kept my voice neutral because I didn't want the answer to turn this place into a war zone. Dana looked at the safe room doors. "With rules," she said, and with the willingness to say no. I didn't answer immediately. I didn't want to say the obvious thing, because the obvious thing was violence, and violence has a way of becoming the only language people speak once it starts. "We'll harden doors," I said instead. "We'll control access. We'll use the building itself as a buffer." Dana studied me, then nodded once. "That's a start." Before they left, she wrote something on a scrap of paper and handed it to Hannah. "Channel 3 on the handheld radios most apartments still have," she said. "If you have a radio, listen. If you hear our unit number, we're alive. If you don't, assume nothing." Then they were gone, swallowed by a world that was unraveling faster than any of us wanted to admit. By late afternoon, we had 43 people inside the safe room. Families, a few staff, Luis, Frank, Hannah, Syra, and a handful of others who had skills we needed. A retired truck driver named Walt Redding, who knew logistics and routes. A quiet young woman named April Eng, who said she worked for a water testing lab. A tall man named Peter Shaw, who used to do heating and cooling service calls. A mom named Tasha Hill, who was a pharmacy technician. A couple of teenagers, including one named Jordan, who carried himself like a kid who had been forced into being an adult by events he didn't choose. When we hit 50, we stopped intake. The banging started within minutes. Hannah stood by the closed main doors with tears in her eyes, listening to people outside scream at a building that couldn't care less about their pain. I walked up beside her. "If we open again," I said softly, "this ends." "I know," she whispered. We moved everyone into the safe room proper and closed the heavy doors. Frank locked them. Then, because I didn't trust locks alone, I directed Peter and Luis to help me reinforce the inside with what we had. Metal brackets from storage. A rolling cabinet jammed into the corner where the door opened. Not as a weapon, but as a delay. Delays are lifesavers. In security, you don't need to build an impenetrable wall. You need to slow the problem down long enough to respond. Inside the safe room, I addressed everyone. It wasn't a speech I wanted to give, but it was one that needed to happen. "We're going to do this like a system," I said, and my voice echoed off concrete. Systems survive when they're maintained. That means we assign jobs. We can serve, We keep clean. We follow rules. People watched me with eyes that wanted certainty. The first rule is hygiene, Syra added, stepping forward. Hand washing. Mask use when we're near each other. If you cough, you cover. If you feel sick, you tell me immediately. Nobody will be punished for being sick. You will be isolated so we don't lose everyone. The second rule is water, I said. We have some stored, but it's not infinite. We'll ration. We'll use toilets properly. We'll keep waste contained and controlled. The third rule is access, Hannah said, voice steadier now that she had structure to stand on. We are not opening doors unless we have a plan. This is not a debate. This is survival. I expected arguments. I expected someone to stand up and accuse us of hoarding safety. Instead, most people nodded. They weren't ready to be brave. They were ready to be told what to do. That night, the power flickered twice. Then it went out. For a moment, darkness swallowed the safe room, and I heard children whimper. Then emergency lights clicked on, dim but functional. The building's generator kicked in with a low rumble that vibrated through the concrete like a distant thunder. Frank and Luis went to check the generator status through the building's monitoring panel. When they came back, Frank's face was pale. It's running, he said, but it's not going to run forever, and if it shuts off, the building will get cold. It's January, Hannah said, rubbing her arms. Not dangerously cold tonight, Peter said, but if we lose heat for days, it gets bad. We don't keep the whole building warm, I said. We keep the safe room warm. We shut off everything else. That's not how the ductwork works, Peter said. Then we improvise, I said. Plastic sheeting, block off vents, create a smaller heated zone. We can do that. We did. We used plastic and tape to create an inner zone where families could sleep together, closer to warmth while maintaining some separation. We used the camp stove only in a controlled way near the restroom exhaust, with strict supervision and plenty of fresh air. I didn't want carbon monoxide poisoning to be the way we lost people. I set a schedule. People like schedules because schedules pretend tomorrow exists. Morning, water distribution, hygiene checks, cleaning rotation. Midday, inventory, planning, education for kids to keep them from falling apart. Afternoon, work tasks, reinforcing doors, setting up better waste control, organizing supplies. Evening, quiet time, radio listening, rest. The second day, we made the shelter more than a room. April Ung, the water lab tech, showed me what she had in her backpack. A small field test kit, the kind used for quick checks. She wasn't bragging. She was offering tools like someone offering a rope. School has water fountains, she said. But if the municipal system gets contaminated, we need to know. Contaminated how? Hannah asked, overhearing. April shrugged. Power loss can cause pressure drops. Pressure drops can cause backflow. Backflow can bring in stuff you don't want. Not just infection. Everything. I nodded. We treat water as suspect. We boil when possible. We use filters if we find them. We store what we can. Walt Redding, the truck driver, approached me later with a clipboard he'd found. You're thinking like a building guy, he said. That's good, but we need to think like a supply chain. We have food, I said. For now, Walt replied. What's your plan when it runs out? I stared at him, and for a second my brain tried to dodge the question. In facilities work, you assume resupply. You assume someone, somewhere, we'll keep sending parts. You assume the world stays connected. That assumption was dead. We'll do runs, I said finally. Carefully, not often. We'll scout, we'll keep it low risk. Sayura's voice cut in from behind us. No hero runs, she said, not unless you want to bring infection back through the door. I raised my hands. Agreed. We do it smart. We use distance. We don't get close. We don't touch anyone. We don't bring strangers in. That last sentence made Hannah flinch. I saw it, and I hated that I had to say it. But if we turned this safe room into a revolving door, it wouldn't be a shelter. It would be a trap. On day 3, we heard the first confirmed radio transmission that made it clear this wasn't a local event. A scratchy voice came through on my handheld radio, faint but readable. National Guard units. Establish distribution points. Avoid large gatherings. Reports of aggressive infected. Maintain distance. If bitten or scratched, isolate immediately. It wasn't a polished broadcast. It was a fragment. But fragments were enough. We weren't waiting out a storm. We were living through a collapse. That afternoon, Mark and Dana returned, both looking like people who had aged a year in 2 days. Dana's uniform was dirty. Mark had dried blood on his sleeve that he didn't comment on, and I didn't ask because I didn't want details I couldn't erase from my mind. You still holding? Dana asked. We're holding, I said. Barely. Dana leaned close, voice low. There's a cluster of infected about 2 miles south. They move toward noise. They've been drawn to car alarms, sirens, anything. If your building alarm goes off, you're going to have trouble. Frank's eyes widened. Fire alarm is on battery backup, he said. If something triggers it, then silence it fast, Dana said, and don't trigger it. No smoke, no cooking smells that set off detectors. We're being careful, I said. Mark looked into the safe room hallway, at children sitting quietly with coloring books someone had found in the classroom. People outside still trying to get in? He asked. Less now, Hannah said. They moved on, or they went home. I don't know. Dana nodded grimly. A lot of people aren't home anymore. She handed me a folded map torn from a road atlas. She'd circled a few locations, a small grocery store, a medical clinic, a warehouse. Those places might still have supplies, she said, but they're not empty. Nothing is empty anymore. I took the map like it was a dangerous gift. Why help us? I asked. Dana met my eyes. Because you're doing it right, she said. Because if there are pockets of order, the city has a chance. And because I don't want to find this place later full of, you know. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. After they left again, I called a meeting with the adults who had skills and steady nerves. We sat in a rough circle on the floor because chairs were a luxury. We're stable for now, I said, but stable isn't safe. We need to extend this place beyond the safe room. We need a buffer zone. We need to control the building. Peter nodded. We can close fire doors in hallways, he said. Create compartments. Keep movement controlled. Luis added, I can shut off non-essential circuits, reduce load, save generator fuel. April said, we should fill every container we have with water while pressure is still good. Sayura said, we need an isolation area. If someone gets sick, they cannot stay in the main group. Hannah looked at each of us. We also need a way to keep people from losing their minds, she said. Kids, parents, everyone. Jordan, the teenager, raised his hand slightly like he was in class. "We could do watch shifts," he said. "Like, people take turns listening and checking, so no one feels like they're just waiting to die." It was a small suggestion, but it hit me hard. He was asking for purpose. "We'll do watch shifts," I agreed. "We'll also do work shifts. Everyone contributes in a way they can." That became the shelter's spine. Contribution wasn't just practical, it was psychological. People who contribute feel like they're still human. We used the building's layout like a fortress without calling it one. The safe room was the keep. The hallways outside became controlled corridors. Classrooms became storage and sleeping overflow, only for short periods, only with escorts, only during daylight hours when we could see and hear better. We covered windows with paper and blinds to reduce visibility from outside. We taped over the bright indicator lights on exit signs visible through glass. We kept noise down. I learned to hate noise. Noise was a beacon. On day 5, the first real test came. It started with a sound from far away, an ugly chorus that didn't match anything human. It rose and fell, not like chanting, not like screaming in fear, but like a single, shared hunger. People inside the safe room froze. Some kids started to cry. Hannah moved automatically, gathering them, whispering calm words. I moved to the hallway with Frank and Peter. We stayed behind the safe room door, listening. The building's concrete muted sound, but you could still feel it, the way you can feel bass through a wall. Walt whispered, "That's a lot of them." I turned on the handheld radio and listened for Dana and Mark's voices. Nothing but static and fragments. Then the building's exterior door rattled. Not a polite knock, a body hitting metal. Again. 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 Frank's face went gray. "They're here," he mouthed. I held up a hand, signaling silence. My heart hammered, but my mind went to cold in the way it does during emergencies. Step by step, reduce risk, maintain barriers. Do not do something heroic and stupid. We had closed off hallway fire doors to create compartments. The main doors were locked. The safe room door was locked. The walls were concrete. We had layers. A facility isn't just a building. It's layers of failure points. And you survive by making sure one failure doesn't become total failure. The rattling moved down the hallway, closer, following sound or scent or instinct. Then it stopped. A pause so heavy it felt like the building held its breath. Then the banging started again, this time on an interior door. It wasn't the safe room door yet. It was a classroom door somewhere in the corridor, probably because it was the nearest. "Stay back," I whispered to the small group with me. Peter's hands clenched and unclenched. Luis hovered near the electrical closet like he wanted to do something. Anything. I did the only thing I could do with any control. I checked our barriers. I pressed on the safe room door, feeling in its solidity. I checked the latch. I checked the reinforcement we'd built. I checked the tape marking the damper. Tiny actions, but they anchored me. After 15 minutes, the banging drifted away. Whatever was outside had moved on, drawn toward something louder elsewhere. We didn't celebrate. We didn't exhale loudly. We just stayed still, listening. That night, nobody slept well. Even the kids, exhausted, woke at small sounds. The shelter had changed. It wasn't an emergency plan anymore. It was a siege. On day 7, the city's water pressure dropped. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, like a faucet that takes longer to fill a cup. April noticed first, because she was the kind of person who notices small changes. "It's losing pressure," she told me. I went to the drinking fountain line and watched. The stream was weaker. "Okay," I said. "We assume it can go out entirely. Fill everything. Now." We filled every jug, bucket, bottle, and container we could find. We drained classroom science lab wash stations into clean bins. We filled mop buckets and labeled them clearly so nobody accidentally put cleaning chemicals in them later. We used the school's hot water heaters as storage by drawing from the drain valves, carefully, not touching anything hot, not wasting. We kept it as clean as we could. That was when I understood something that haunted me. Modern life is built on invisible miracles. Water pressure is a miracle. Garbage pickup is a miracle. Electricity on demand is a miracle. When miracles stop, you have to become your own miracle, and that takes planning and discipline and luck. We didn't have much luck left to spend. Day 10 brought sickness, and it wasn't what anyone wanted to admit. A little boy named Mason spiked a fever. His mother, Jenna, panicked immediately, convinced it meant infection. Syra took him to the isolation room we'd set up in a former supply closet near the safe room, lined with plastic sheeting and stocked with a couple of cots. It turned out to be strep throat, or at least Syra strongly suspected it. He had swollen glands, a sore throat, no confusion, no aggression. He was miserable, but he was still Mason. The relief in the shelter was loud, even though we tried to keep it quiet. People smiled for the first time in days. A few cried. Syra didn't smile. "This is why we need isolation," she said. "Not just for the worst thing, for normal things that still kill you when the system is gone." Tasha, the pharmacy tech, helped Syra ration antibiotics from a small stash someone had brought. They treated Mason carefully, watching for improvement. He improved. That small victory mattered more than 100 speeches. But the victory came with a cost. It proved we could get sick without the outbreak. It proved we were still vulnerable to every boring, everyday threat that the modern world used to handle quietly in the background. Around day 12, Dana returned alone. Hannah saw her first through a hallway window and ran to unlock the inner door. I caught up, cautious, scanning behind Dana for movement. She looked like she'd been running for miles. Her breath came in hard pulls. Her eyes were bloodshot. "Mark?" I asked. Dana's jaw tightened. "Gone," she said. "Not infected, just gone. Hit by a driver who didn't stop. We don't have time to mourn properly anymore." Hannah covered her mouth with her hand. Dana leaned against the wall, shoulders shaking once, then she forced herself still. "I'm not here to collapse," she said. "I'm here because you need to know. The distribution points failed. Too many people, not enough order. It turned into fighting. Then it turned into worse." Syra stepped forward. "Any official help coming?" Dana let out a harsh laugh without humor. "Official help is overwhelmed. They're trying, but it's like trying to stop a flood with sandbags made of tissue paper." I watched her carefully. "Why are you still moving?" I asked. "Why not shelter somewhere?" Dana looked at the safe room door behind us. "Because you built something worth defending," she said. "And because I can't stand the idea of dying alone in a house with the lights off." It was the most honest thing anyone had said in days. We let her in. Adding, Dana changed our dynamic. She didn't act like a commander, but her presence made rules feel enforceable. She helped organize perimeter checks, quiet, careful, done from inside when possible. She taught us how to move in hallways without making noise, how to look through a window without putting your whole face in it, how to listen for patterns. But she also brought stress, because she knew too much about what was happening outside. A lot of people are forming little groups, she told me one evening. Some are decent, some aren't. There's a group taking over a shopping center south of here. They're calling it a safe zone, but it's run like a toll road. Pay to enter? Pay with what? I asked. Dana's eyes flicked away. Stuff. Labor. Sometimes. People. Hannah shuddered. We're not doing that, I said immediately, and my voice came out sharper than I intended. Dana nodded. Then you need to be ready to say no when they come asking, because they will. That night, I lay awake on the concrete floor with a thin mat beneath me, staring at the ceiling. The generator was off to conserve fuel, and the safe room was lit by battery lanterns. In the dim light, faces looked like sculptures carved out of exhaustion. I thought about standards and codes, how safe rooms are designed with certain assumptions, how engineers model wind loads and debris impacts, how building codes assume emergency services still exist, how none of those documents include a chapter called What to Do When the World Stops. In my head, I began writing my own standard. Outlast Standard Revision 1. Shelter must control access. Shelter must control water. Shelter must control waste. Shelter must control air. Shelter must control information. Shelter must control fear. Fear was the hardest one. Fear made people loud. Fear made them selfish. Fear made them reckless. Fear was the thing that drew the infected. On day 15, we did our first supply run. I didn't want to, but our food stores were already shrinking faster than comfort allowed. 50 people can eat through a pantry like a fire eats through dry grass. We chose a small team, me, Donna, Luis, and Walt. Sarah wanted to come, but we needed her inside. Peter stayed to manage building systems. Hannah stayed to lead the shelter emotionally, which was a real job even if it didn't look like one. We planned like it was a work order with a life or death penalty. We picked a location from Dana's map, a small grocery store about a mile away that might have been overlooked because it was not on the main drag. We decided on early morning when it was cold and quiet. We agreed on rules, no entering if we heard movement inside, no engaging with anyone, no heroics, no bringing strangers back. We moved in silence. We used the school's service exit as our departure point because it was less visible. We cracked it open slowly, listening, smelling the air, scanning the parking lot. The world outside looked normal in the cruelest way. The sun rose. The wind moved dry grass. A plastic bag drifted along the road like a tumbleweed. Normal, except for the abandoned cars. Except for the distant smoke. Except for the silence that felt staged, like a movie set after the actors leave. We moved on foot, staying close to fences and tree lines. Dana led. Walt carried an empty backpack with extra straps. Luis carried a small crowbar and a flashlight. Tools, not weapons, because the goal was entry and exit, not confrontation. I carried a clipboard and a marker because I couldn't stop being the guy who labels things even when the world is ending. I also carried a small battery radio, tuned low. The grocery store's front windows were cracked. That was bad. It meant someone had been here. Dana held up a hand and we froze. She crouched, peered through the broken glass without exposing her face fully. Empty, she whispered. Maybe. Maybe gets you killed, Walt muttered, but he followed anyway. We entered through a side door that had been forced open. Inside, the store smelled like spoiled dairy and dust. Shelves were stripped in the obvious aisles, but not everything was gone. People in panic grabbed the same things. They forget the boring stuff. We moved quickly, gathering what mattered. Canned goods, rice, oats, baby formula, salt, cooking oil, hygiene products, trash bags. Donna found a small battery-powered weather radio and handed it to me like a treasure. In the pharmacy aisle, Tasha would have cried if she'd seen how empty it was. But Louise found a box of antiseptic wipes and a few bottles of ibuprofen that had fallen behind a shelf. Walt found peanut butter in a damaged case that someone had missed. I found water purification tablets on a low shelf in the camping section, probably there by accident. Then Dana stiffened. A sound. Not loud. A scrape somewhere deeper in the store. We froze. My pulse hammered in my ears so loudly I thought it would give us away. Dana gestured. Back out now. We didn't run. Running is noise. We moved fast, but controlled, stepping carefully around debris, not knocking over displays, keeping our breath quiet. The scrape came again, closer. Then a low moan, like someone half asleep and starving. We were almost at the door when a figure lurched into view at the end of the aisle. It wore a stained hoodie. Its posture was wrong, head tilted forward, arms hanging like they weren't fully controlled. Dana didn't panic. She guided us out with a firm hand signal, and we slipped through the door and shut it behind us. Outside, we walked briskly until we were 2 blocks away. Only then did we stop and breathe. That was too close, Louise whispered. That was correct, Dana said. You didn't freeze. You didn't shout. You left. That's how you stay alive. My hands shook as I adjusted the straps on my pack. We got enough for a while, I said. A while is gold now, Walt replied. When we returned, the shelter greeted us like we'd brought sunlight back with us. People didn't cheer loudly. They'd learned noise discipline, but their eyes lit up. Kids stared at the bags like they were Christmas. Saira inspected everything before it came inside. Wipes, separate containers, gloves, a decontamination routine that felt extreme until you remember what the alternative is. That night, after inventory and ration planning, I sat with Hannah by the safe room door. The concrete was cold under us. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and human bodies. You're doing something incredible, Hannah said quietly. I'm doing something desperate, I answered. She shook her head. No. Desperate is everyone outside, pounding on doors, thinking if they just push hard enough, the world will fix itself. What you're doing is building a new world in a room. I didn't know what to say to that, because it sounded too big, and I didn't trust big ideas anymore. Big ideas were how people ended up making terrible choices. I trusted only what I could measure, so I measured. We have enough food for 3 weeks at current rationing, I said. Water? Depends. If pressure stays low, we're on stored water and boil and treat routines. Generator fuel. Maybe 10 days of intermittent use if we're careful. Hannah exhaled. 3 weeks, she whispered. That's more time than I thought we'd have. Time isn't the same as safety, I said. Hannah nodded. I know. On day 20, the group Dana warned us about arrived. We heard vehicles first, engines slow and deliberate. We kept the building dark, and we watched through blinds from a classroom window that overlooked the parking lot. 3 pickup trucks rolled in, followed by a van. People got out wearing layered clothing and backpacks. They moved like they'd done this before, not frantic, not lost. Organized. Dana's jaw tightened. "That's them," she whispered. "Shopping center group." The leader was a man in a baseball cap with a neat beard, the kind of face you'd trust in a hardware store. He carried his hands visible, palms open, walking toward the main doors like he expected them to open for him. Hannah looked at me. "What do we do?" "We don't open," I said. "Not yet. We communicate through the door." We moved to the main entrance. Frank stayed behind the inner hallway fire door. Peter stood by the safe room door with a radio. Saira stood slightly back, watching faces, watching body language. I spoke through the door without opening it. "You need to leave," I called. The man smiled as if we were negotiating a parking spot. "Not here to cause trouble," he said. "Name's Grant. We're checking on communities, making sure folks aren't alone." "We're not alone," I said. "We're secure. Move on." Grant's smile didn't fade. "Secure is relative," he said. "You're in a school, good bones, but you can't feed 50 people forever with scavenging. You need a network. We have one." Donna leaned close to me, whispering, "He'll offer terms." Grant continued, voice smooth. "We can share supplies, protection, information. In exchange, you contribute, labor, skills, maybe a portion of what you collect." Hannah's hands clenched. I could feel her anger simmering. She hated the idea of paying a toll to live. "We're not joining anything," I said. Grant's gaze flicked, like he was reading the building behind the door. "You don't have to join. You just have to cooperate. The world is different now. Cooperation looks different." Dana stepped forward, voice cutting through. "Grant, I know you. I know what your cooperation looks like." Grant's smile became thinner. "Officer," he said, like he was amused. "You're alive. That's good. You should know better than anyone that order doesn't happen by itself." "Order isn't the same as control," Dana snapped. Grant sighed theatrically. "We're not your enemy," he said. "But if you refuse to be part of something bigger, you become isolated, and isolation is dangerous." I kept my voice steady. "Leave," I repeated. "We won't open." Grant stared at the door for a long moment. Then he nodded, like he was making a note in his head. "Okay," he said. "I respect a firm boundary. But I'll tell you this. If you run low, if you get desperate, don't wait until you're starving to ask. Desperation makes people messy." He turned and walked back to his vehicles. They drove off slowly, like they wanted us to watch them leave. After they were gone, the shelter felt colder. "They'll come back," Dana said. "I know," I replied. "Next time they might not ask," Louise said quietly. Concrete box was their whole world. "We're not becoming them," I said. "Next time they might not ask," Louise said quietly. I looked at the safe room, at the people inside it, at the kids who had started to believe this concrete box was their whole world. "We're not becoming them," I said. "We're not paying in people. We're not trading ethics for calories." Dana's expression softened just slightly. "Then you need to get better at outlasting," she said, "because your morals don't matter if you're dead." That night, I rewrote my internal standard. Outlast Standard Revision 2. Shelter must be able to resist coercion. Shelter must be able to operate without outside trade. Shelter must have redundancy in water, power, and sanitation. Shelter must manage conflict before conflict becomes violence. Conflict came from inside as often as outside. By day 25, people were tired of rationing, tired of sleeping on concrete, tired of living under rules. A man named Derek, an accountant he'd told us the first day, began complaining loudly that leadership wasn't transparent. He wanted voting on every decision. He wanted to open the shelter to more people. He called us selfish. "We're hoarding safety," he said one evening. "We're hiding in here while people die outside." Hannah's face flushed. "We're not hiding," she said. "We're maintaining a shelter for children. Do you want them dead too?" Derek spread his hands. "I want fairness." Saira spoke calmly. "Fairness is not the same as survival," she said. "If we collapse, everyone loses." Derek looked at me. "And who appointed you?" he demanded. "Who gave you the right to decide who lives in here and who doesn't?" The room went quiet. 50 people holding their breath. I stood slowly. I didn't want to escalate. I didn't want to crush him. But I couldn't let his rhetoric become infection. "No one appointed me," I said. "Hannah called me because she needed someone who understands building systems. I stepped up because somebody had to. If you want to take over, go ahead, but you will be responsible for the consequences. That's the price." Derek's eyes flicked away. He didn't want the price. He wanted the power without the weight. Dana stepped forward, voice level. "Here's how it works," she said. "We do not fight. We do not scream. We do not undermine each other in ways that get people killed. If you have concerns, you bring them to the leadership group at the morning meeting. You do not stir panic at night." Derek opened his mouth, then shut it. He wasn't a villain. He was scared. Scared people reach for control in whatever way they know. After that, we created a formal routine. A morning briefing where anyone could raise issues, and a small council, me, Hannah, Saira, Dana, Luis, Peter, and Walt, who made final calls after listening. It wasn't democracy in the full sense, but it was transparency with a spine. It helped. Structure always helps. By day 30, the shelter looked like a real habitat. We had designated sleeping zones. We had a sanitation station with hand-washing schedules and clear signage. We had a waste routine, double bagging, sealed storage, controlled disposal when safe. We had a water station with measured distribution. We had a power routine. Generator on for 2 hours in the morning and 2 in the evening to charge lanterns and radios, then off. We had a quiet hour. We had a school corner where kids did worksheets and read books like stubborn proof that childhood still existed. We also had a problem. The building around us was becoming less reliable. Without constant heating, pipes were at risk. Without normal ventilation, humidity built in pockets. Without staff and routine maintenance, little things began to fail. Door closers, locks, a bathroom faucet that wouldn't shut off completely. I spent my days doing what I always did, chasing small failures before they became big ones. I scavenged parts from other areas of the school. I used tape and wire and brackets like they were the language of survival. One morning, Frank found me staring at the generator monitoring panel. "You look like you're trying to will it to stay alive," he said. "I'm trying to read its mood," I said. Frank laughed softly, then grew serious. "You know what scares me most?" he asked. "What?" "That this place is working. Frank said. That we're building a life. Because if we can build a life in here, it means we might be in here for a long time. I nodded. Yeah, I said. That scares me too. Around day 35, we heard a new kind of sound outside. Not moaning, not banging, but human voices singing. It drifted in faintly through the building, not loud enough to locate, but clear enough to recognize as a group. It wasn't a happy song. It was a hymn, slow and steady. Reverend Cole, who had been quiet most of the time, stood and listened with tears in his eyes. That's my people, he whispered. Hannah looked at him. You think they're alive? He nodded slowly. Or something that sounds like them is. Dana's face hardened. We do not open doors for singing, she said. We do not let emotion decide security. Reverend Cole's shoulders sagged, but he didn't argue. He knew, deep down, that Dana was right. The singing passed. It faded, and it left behind a strange chill, like the world was trying on different masks to see which one made us weakest. That same day, we found out Grant's group had moved closer. Dana returned from a cautious perimeter look, done from inside, never stepping out unless absolutely necessary, her expression tight. They've taken a nearby church, she said. They're using it as an outpost. Reverend Cole's face went pale. Which church? Dana named it, and Reverend Cole closed his eyes like he could see the sanctuary and the pews and the stained glass. They'll use faith to pull people, Dana said. They'll promise safety in exchange for obedience. Hannah whispered, We're going to have to fight them, aren't we? No, I said immediately. We're going to outlast them. Dana looked at me. Outlasting is a form of fighting, she said. It's just quieter. Quiet was our advantage, but quiet didn't solve the biggest long-term problem, food. By day 40, we were down to careful portions. Nobody was starving yet, but hunger was becoming a constant background noise. Kids asked for seconds, and we had to say no. Adults lost weight. Tempers shortened. We needed a sustainable plan. April, the water tech, had been quietly working on one, rain catchment. The school had a flat roof with drains, and we had tarps and containers. With some careful placement and basic filtration, we could catch rainwater and reduce dependence on city pressure. This could keep us alive if the municipal water dies, she said. I studied her setup sketches. Simple, practical, not dangerous. We can do it, I said. We'll need to access the roof. Dana grimaced. Roof access is visible. Only during a rain, April said. Noise is masked. Movement is less noticeable. I nodded. We do it on the next storm day. Quick, controlled. We also began scouting for something we'd avoided thinking about. Growing food. Not in the safe room, not quickly, but seeds existed in the world. Soil existed. The school had a small outdoor garden area used for science projects. Walt shook his head when I brought it up. Gardens take time, he said. Time we might not have. Time is what we're buying, I replied. Every day we stay alive is time. On day 42, a thunderstorm rolled in. Dark clouds marching over the plains like an army. The sound of rain on the roof was so loud it felt like the building was being applauded by the sky. We used it. Dana and I went up with April and Luis. We moved fast, staying low. We laid tarps to guide water into clean bins, filtered through cloth, and then treated. It wasn't perfect, but it was water that didn't depend on a dying city. When we carried the first containers back down, people watched like we'd brought treasure. In a way, we had. At night, with the rain still tapping overhead, I sat alone in the hallway outside the safe room, listening to the radio. The static was heavy, but I caught fragments. Evacuation corridor, Interstate 35, blocked, outbreak zones, avoid. Then, clear as a bell for 2 seconds, a voice. This is emergency management. If you can shelter safely, shelter. If you must move, move early. Do not wait. Move early, don't wait. I thought about that for a long time. In the beginning, we'd moved early, into the safe room, before the streets became fully impassable. We'd chosen shelter instead of flight. Now, the question was whether we were supposed to stay forever, or whether outlasting meant knowing when to leave. On day 45, the answer came in the form of smoke. Not outside smoke, inside. A faint, burning smell drifted into the safe room. People sat up, eyes wide. Frank bolted to his feet. "That's electrical," he said, voice sharp with certainty. I was already moving, following my nose down the hallway to an electrical closet near a classroom wing we'd mostly stopped using. The smell grew stronger. Luis joined me, face tense. "If something's arcing—" "We shut down that section," I said. We opened the closet carefully. Inside, a breaker panel was warm to the touch, and one breaker looked discolored. That's never a good sign. "Load imbalance," Luis murmured. Maybe someone plugged in something they shouldn't. We traced it to a classroom where someone had tried to use a space heater. Secretly, probably, trying to keep their kids warm without waiting for the generator schedule. "Everybody wants comfort," Frank muttered. "Comfort gets you killed." We shut off the circuit. We aired the area out. We checked for fire. We were lucky. We caught it early. But the incident shook us. It reminded everyone that the shelter was only as strong as the discipline of the people inside it. A safe room can resist tornado debris. It can't resist selfishness. That night, I spoke again to the group. "We are alive because we follow rules," I said. "No personal heaters, no unauthorized power use. If you're cold, you tell us. We solve it together." People nodded, chastened. The parent who had used the heater, an exhausted woman named Marcy, cried quietly. She wasn't evil. She was desperate for her children not to shiver. We adjusted our schedule. We ran the generator a little longer at night during cold snaps, but we tightened other usage. Trade-offs. Always trade-offs. On day 50, Grant returned. This time, there were more vehicles. Dana saw them first, and her face went hard. "They're here," she said, "and they brought friends." We gathered at the main doors again. I refused to open. We communicated through the barrier. Grant's voice carried through the glass. "Erik," he called, like we were old buddies. "We need to talk." I didn't answer with his name. Names create familiarity. Familiarity is leverage. "What do you want?" I called back. Grant sighed dramatically. "We're consolidating," he said. "The area is getting worse. We're bringing people into managed zones. This school is a good asset." "You don't own it," I said. "We're not talking about ownership," Grant replied smoothly. "We're talking about survival. You can come voluntarily and keep your little community intact, or you can resist and, well, resistance is messy." Dana stepped forward, voice cold. "Threatening a shelter with children is not going to end the way you think." Grant's tone changed slightly. Still calm, but with steel now. "Officer, I'm not threatening children," he said. "I'm offering them a future. You know the reality. You can't keep this going. You'll run out. You'll get sick, and then people will die. I felt my hands clench into fists and I forced them open. Anger is noise. We've got water, I said. We've got plans. We've got discipline. Grant laughed softly. Discipline, he repeated. That's cute. Discipline breaks when people get hungry. He stepped closer to the door. Open up, he said, voice firmer. Let's talk face to face. No, I said. Grant stared at the door, then nodded slowly. Okay, he said, then here's the new reality. We're going to stay nearby. We're going to watch. And when your people start slipping out to scavenge, we're going to collect a tax, because that's how order works now. I leaned closer to the door, voice steady but low. That's not order, I said. That's extortion. Grant shrugged. Call it what you want, he said. Words don't feed people. He turned and walked away again. Vehicles rolled back, not leaving entirely, just repositioning. Dana exhaled. He's setting a net, she said. He wants to starve you into compliance. My brain went into problem-solving mode, not panic. Then we change our patterns, I said. We reduce runs, we use rain catchment, we garden, we scavenge at distance, we don't play his game. Walt nodded slowly. That's a long road, he said. I know, I said, but long roads are what we do now. Over the next 10 days, we turned the shelter into something that could resist a siege without becoming a prison. We improved our internal communication. We used radios on a schedule, listening for official signals and for any communities that might be forming outside Grant's influence. We kept a log. Dates, weather, radio fragments, sightings. Data is hope. We established a no-go zone around the main entrances, using interior barriers and keeping movement hidden. We used the back service corridors for any necessary building access because they were less visible. We also began preparing for a possibility I hated. Leaving. Not in a panic. Not as refugees sprinting from a burning house. As a controlled relocation, if staying became a slow death. We made go bags for each family. Water, food, hygiene, extra clothes, a flashlight, a whistle, written rules for moving quietly, a small card with the shelter's radio channel and call signs. We taught kids how to stay close, how to hold on to a strap, how to be silent like it was a game. Hannah cried when she taught the youngest ones. She did it anyway. On day 61, a sound came that wasn't infected and wasn't Grant. It was a helicopter, far off, chopping the air. We ran to windows, careful to stay behind cover. The helicopter moved across the horizon, heading south, then disappeared. A minute later, another followed. Dana's face lit with something I hadn't seen in her for weeks, cautious hope. That's organized, she said. That's someone still flying. We listened to the radio. Static, then faint. Corridor, west of Norman. Temporary evacuation, screening, medical. It was real. It was official enough to matter. We gathered the council. We debated. We weighed risks. Stay and face Grant's slow net. Move toward a corridor that might be overwhelmed, dangerous, or already compromised. Saida spoke first. If there's organized screening, that's our best chance to reconnect with a functioning system, she said. Medicine, clean water, protection. Walt frowned. Corridors draw crowds, he said. Crowds draw trouble. Luis looked at the food inventory. We can stretch maybe 3 more weeks, he said. Maybe. Hannah's hands trembled. I don't want to move the kids, she whispered, but I also don't want them to starve. Dana looked at me. What do you think, Erik? I stared at the safe room door, at the concrete, at the place that had saved us. I think the shelter did what it was built to do, I said slowly. It kept us alive long enough to find the next step. Frank swallowed hard. So we leave? Not all at once, I said. Not noisy, not obvious. We plan, we move at dawn, we avoid Grant's net, we use back routes, we go light. My voice shook slightly. I hated leaving what I'd built. I hated admitting that outlasting sometimes means letting go. But the truth is, a shelter isn't a trophy. It's a tool. And tools are meant to be used, not worshipped. We spent the next 3 days preparing like our lives depended on it, because they did. We monitored Grant's movements. We listened for the helicopter pattern again. We packed food into portions. We assigned movement groups, families with kids in the middle, adults on the edges, Dana and I guiding, Luis and Walt carrying heavier loads. Syra carried medical supplies like they were sacred. On the morning we left, the sky was pale and cold, the kind of dawn that makes everything look temporarily innocent. We moved through the service corridor, out the back, keeping low, staying silent. The building behind us stood still, a concrete promise we were breaking. Half a mile away, we stopped in a ditch line and looked back. Cedar Ridge looked like a normal school from the outside. No smoke, no banners, no obvious sign that 50 people had lived and fought fear inside its core. "That place saved us," Hannah whispered. "It did," I said, "and it might save someone else someday." We moved on. The road south was not a straight line. We avoided main streets, we crossed fields, slipped behind warehouses, moved through neighborhoods where abandoned cars sat like fossils of panic. We saw infected at a distance, wandering, drawn to distant noises. We didn't engage. We didn't get close. We treated them like a wildfire, something you survive by respecting its reach. Twice we saw Grant's people, once at a gas station, once near a church. We stayed hidden, moving only when they looked away. My heart pounded so hard I thought they'd hear it. By midday, we reached a ridgeline where we could see a highway in the distance. There were vehicles there, slow and clustered. A checkpoint, a line, a corridor. And above it, far off, another helicopter. Syra exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 60 days. Kids clutched their parents. Adults stared like starving people staring at a meal. Dana leaned close to me. "This is where it gets messy," she whispered. "Crowds, rules, fear." I nodded. "Then we use what we learned," I said. "We stay disciplined." As we approached, we saw National Guard vehicles and uniformed personnel. Real organization, real barriers, real order trying to exist in the ruins. We saw screening tents. We saw medical staff. We saw people being directed into lines. We also saw desperation. People pleading. People arguing. People trying to cut. The corridor was not salvation. It was another system under strain. But it was a system. And systems, even strained ones, are better than chaos. When we reached the line, a soldier with a tired face looked at us and raised a hand. "Group?" he asked. 50, I said. "Sheltered for 2 months. No bites, no known exposure inside shelter. We followed isolation protocols." He blinked. "You did what?" I met his eyes. "We had a reinforced safe room," I said. "We treated it like a long-term shelter. Rationing, hygiene, controlled access." For a moment, something like respect crossed his expression. "Okay," he said, voice steadier. "Okay. Stay together. Follow instructions. You're going to screening first." Hannah squeezed my arm, hard. We moved forward, step by step, into the noise and the lines and the uncertain promise of something larger than ourselves. I glanced back once, at the north, at the invisible school behind us. I didn't feel like I'd abandoned it. I felt like I'd proven it. A shelter designed for tornadoes had outlasted the collapse long enough for us to reach the next fragile piece of civilization. Not because concrete is magic, but because people inside it chose discipline over panic, routine over chaos, and responsibility over comfort. If you're listening to this somewhere safe, if safe still exists, understand what I learned the hard way. A shelter is not just walls, it's rules, it's maintenance, it's quiet. It's the daily choice to act like the future matters, even when the world is trying to convince you it doesn't.